Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
Sorry about the inconvenience, but that's electronics. Want to ask if there are questions from from yesterday or from anything that you came in, anything that came across your mind or anything we discussed in the last few weeks. Are there any questions, especially from yesterday?
Good morning. This is Angela. I wanted to ask, what did y'all talk about yesterday? I went on behind
A lot of stuff. We continue talking about symbols, and we talked about the idea of the African trying to occupy a space that he should not occupy. In other words, trying to become as the Caucasian is, as opposed to making sure that he follows what he was sent into the earth to do, and that is the restoration of truth. But as far as what we talked about in depth, that's quite a bit of information. So that's the gist of it anyway. Yesterday's something that a question that Kathy raised caught my ear, and later on I gave some more, or given some more thought to it. The one about having a seat at the table, and I would, if you would raise that question again, Kathy, not necessarily the same way you did it yesterday, but speak to that if you will.
Yes, the question that I asked them yesterday was, I've heard so many political pundits and things, and they're fighting for equality and for our rights. They keep saying, I want my seat at the table. And based on the conversation that we had about erecting a spiritual table and building a spiritual house and everything that we talked about yesterday, it dawned on me that we're fighting for something that we're not even supposed to have, because that's the wrong place to want to have a seat. And I was thinking about, when I talk about having a seat at the table, if I'm putting my feet under that table to sit at that table, then spiritually the implications of spiritual feet speaks to your journey. So if I'm going to have a seat at the table of racism and everything else that that table represents, then to assimilate, when I sit at that table, I assimilate into everything that that table represents. And if my journey goes along that pathway, if I have a seat at that table and my feet take me in that direction, then the trajectory of my entire spiritual journey would have to change. And then I would be assimilated into whatever it is that that table represents. And so therefore, that's what I was asking yesterday, because I had that epiphany that, oh my God, we've been saying these things and they sound so right when you hear them, that I want my rights, I want my seat at that table. But that is not for us. That table was never for us. And it is not even something that we should even be desiring to have, because it is not anything spiritual, and it will not allow me to be who I was destined and purposed to be. It only causes me to assimilate into something that's not for me. And I just had a thought on that, and I shared that yesterday.
Thank you. Are there any questions about that or comments on that?
Hey,
Well,
Rep,
let me
this is
ask it this
Charles.
way. Yeah. Go ahead, Charles.
Oh, okay. I thought you were getting ready to say something. And like what Kathy said, when you sit at that table, you partake in everything that they have to say, and and but what they have to say is not going to be spiritual anything spiritual to help you or help someone else. It's just to keep the spiritual table. Keep that table among them. Now, if you don't want to sit at that table and eat among them, that means they're gonna leave you. You be by yourself, all to yourself.
Yeah.
You be ostracized, what I'm also saying, because you're not gonna partake of what they're having, and you're not eating from the table of what they're giving, because you can't bring your own food to the table.
Right, you can't. And it's not that you will be ostracized, it's that you're already ostracized and don't realize it. And to look at that further, yesterday in discussing this, I made a statement about the inability to embrace spirituality by those who are the perpetuators of racism, capitalism, and all the other isms that are the ills of the earth. Someone asked me a question earlier today about a scripture that involves Jesus going to being asked to heal the centurion's daughter, and with the centurion saying that you're a man of authority, as I am, and you don't have to come to my house. You just speak the word, and it will happen. Well, that in itself speaks volumes to the desire for spiritual understanding. The centurion, as I see it, represents those who don't have the spiritual insight. However, they don't seemingly want it until they get to a place of desperation. This centurion had been in the midst of Palestine, had been in the midst of the Hebrews, had been in the midst and knew about Jesus and his teachings, and that is obvious by what he said. So the question becomes, with him knowing the power with which Jesus taught, with him knowing the spiritual abilities that Jesus possessed, he never came to Jesus until he was in a state of desperation. So that says to me that if I will continue in this journey and watching things fall apart has opportunity to bring an understanding, a spiritual understanding to the extended community of humans. And that is saying it doesn't matter whether he came out of desperation, that what matters is that he came. And it is very obvious that in his time of desperation, what he recognized was the reality of spirituality. It was not common just to see it was, if it was going to happen. It was him knowing it was going to happen. And Jesus, and that prompted Jesus' response of, in all of Israel, I have not found such faith. And that was not the first time Jesus had said that. He also said that when he was speaking to the woman, I think it was the Samaritan woman, who had come to him seeking healing. And he said, it's not right to feed, it's not right to feed the bread of Israel to dogs. And she said, even the dogs eat the crumbs from the table. So again, recognizing the depth of belief or desire at that point of desperation. So the question becomes, if that is true, and I certainly believe it is, what is the point of desperation for this society? If what we hear constantly is the protection of what democracy, something that's never existed, by the way, but we constantly hear save our democracy. We constantly hear we are moving into a authoritarian society if we don't do something now. That speaks to desperation. So that makes our responsibility even more important in that we must continue to infuse truth and clarity into the macro. And by doing so, we are bringing this chaotic condition to the surface more and more. And the more it is seen, the more the feelings of desperation are expressed in a visible way, in an audible way. So when things get to the place where, as the centurion said, his daughter was dying, when it gets to the place where death is imminent, or when it gets to the place where where we recognize how sick this society is, it is at that point that I do believe that the manifestation will take place. As Barbara said yesterday, is not that it change is not here. It's that we are seeing things with our eyes as opposed to with our eye. And I do believe also that this chaos, the increase of it is an indicator of how close we are to the manifestation of the change that is already present. Even with the woman with the issue of blood, the idea of her seeking soliciting the aid of Jesus, even by cross, that issue of blood speaks to the loss of life or life draining from her. And the current government, the 12 years, is the life draining from her rather is indicative of that current our governmental policies that was exploitive and was actually demeaning to those who lived under it. And when she touched the hem of the garment, the healing speaks to the idea of bringing balance to this society, healing the feminine energy. If you think about it, all three of these who are involved are females. And this does not speak to a physical woman, but it speaks to the idea of spiritual femininity. The young girl speaks of the innocence of it all. The lady with the issue of blood, the woman at the well, all of these things we need to take another look at, I do believe, so that we can get a clearer vision of what was taking place with Jesus in relationship to feminine energy. And I do believe that it will give us a clearer picture of where we are, because when we think about what's going on in society, it seems as though there are two targets, and the major targets are the African and the female. And I say the African and the female, I mean the female period, and the African in particular. These are the targets. And quite frankly, if we look at the history of the African's relationship with feminine energy, what do we see? As we talked about yesterday, we look at what we see is a history of the African recognizing the necessity of adhering to the wisdom of feminine energy by virtue of the feminine being not just the advisors, but also in the case of the Queen of Sheba, in many cases in the scriptures or as well as in history, Nefertiti, where we see leadership of the female, where we see the Sumerian females being sought after because of their clairvoyancy, which is really their prophetic utterances. So I do think that where we are is we are right now at the right table, and we are eating from the proper table. The table that's been set before us has been done by our Creator, and the table that we have sought to be a part of has been set for those who are in power. However, there has always been an empty seat there, and that empty seat was there for us to fill so that they could keep up with what we are doing and know how to counteract what our desires are. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, good morning, Pastor. Good morning, everybody. This is George. You know, I don't believe it's a coincidence, but, you know, since the pandemic, in terms of the COVID started, you know, there was a exhibit at the Center for the Performing Arts at the Kimmel Center that exactly stated what was said, taking your seat at the table. And it was talking about women, you know, in terms of this 100 years, as far as them being able to, you know, have their seat, I believe, to just really acknowledge the importance of the femininity. And I don't think, again, as I say, it's no coincidence that as we now look at where we are, and just to look at, you know, the importance of, as you say, history, that we can see the significance of being able to listen not only to the femininity, but look at history in that sense, in terms of it's having its place in power. And I know yesterday, you know, you spoke about the Shabaka stone, and I only wanted to say in terms of referencing that when we look at the Memphite theology, in terms of what was written, you know, 5,000 years before the Christian era, you know, it talked about the importance of Nun, as far as being the feminine energy in terms of the wavicles and particles of the water. So I think that there's something significant in terms of where we are and us coming out of being able to appreciate the journey that we're on. And so I just wanted to share those thoughts because it's time, you know, again, as I said, you know, taking, you know, your seat at the table, you know, I think we need to, again, appreciate where we all are in the feminine energy that's speaking out to us at this time. I'm done.
Thank you, George. Anyone else?
Yeah, good morning. It's Mary. One of the things I was meditating or just thinking, and I thought about all that was going on in the world, and I was just wondering, I said, Lord, I just don't get it. Why is it this and why is that? And the scripture came, don't worry about them, follow me. And I thought about, okay, so stay in the beginning, continue to do the things that we're supposed to do. And that was in John, because I went to look it up. I didn't know exactly where it was, John 21. So I'm seeing that as a way to kind of help keep me balanced. Follow me, you follow me. So, and I'm wondering, is that kind of in the lines of what we've been talking about today? Just a thought. Thanks.
Well, it is, Mary, in that we are the me who we are following is the teachings of Jesus. Now, keep in mind when it says me, what does that look like, Mary? It doesn't look like a person.
Right. It's not the person. It's not an. Now I know it's not. Well, it never was a person, because I mean, even though Jesus lived, he's not physically on this earth, but the spiritual realm is there. The energy, I like the spirit of the positive energy, the force is there, and it's up to us to keep that positive force going. Although there are other distractions in this world, it's our place to keep that positive energy going and try to counteract negativity as much as possible.
Now, I want you to notice something. When I said who is the me, is not what does that look like? You didn't say Jesus, which means that we are moving away from the symbols, because what have we been taught all our lives? That we are to follow Jesus. All our lives, we've heard the idea of what is it? We use interchangeably the worship of God, the worship of Jesus. Now that we're beginning to see that the symbols are not the power, we're not talking about following Jesus, a man. We're talking about the me being the teachings. Now that we see the symbol, we're talking about following God. We're talking about worshiping God, worshiping Elohim, so being submissive to Elohim. Why is it that Jesus said not to submit to him? Why is it that Jesus said you should worship the Father only? Why did he say that? Because Jesus knew that it was not him, that his coming was not about him. It was about the teachings. It was about showing humanity who it is. It was not about him. And now we are getting to the place where we see that it's not about him, not about us humanly, physically, not about the cross. It's about the message that it represents. So I do appreciate that that statement, Mary. Are there any questions about this, or is there anything else you would like to add to this? Ron, are you there?
Yes, sir.
There was something that you mentioned in reference to the issue of the African verse in religion.
Yes. And I'm listening to what is being said, and what you are saying you talked about yesterday, and I think you just about covered it. I just say it in a different way. I'm trying to think of how to start this. Mine started in a different way. I guess I've been searching internally and asking God questions, and one of the things that I've been looking at is death and what that means, and it has led me to where I'm going to go in a minute. Give me just a few minutes, but one of the things that I was looking at is the death of the African, how freely it happens and how frequently it happens, and not from an emotional place where I'm like, God, what's going on, but from just a place of understanding, to see where we are, and is there anything more that we're supposed to be doing? Usually is what kind of drives me. Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Am I seeing what I'm supposed to see? What do we look at? And even looking at your words as pastor speaks or anybody speaks, and picking up clues from that. Okay, where does that lead us? What does that say to us? And then in that search, I've been looking a long time what beginning looks like, and as it started off with me as looking at what does it mean to be born again. That's where we start. And that journey is pastor, and some of you remember, started years ago. years before we came together as one, when we were in separate buildings, when we, before the pandemic, all that, we talk about being born again. We peel off another layer and another layer and another layer. And I kept seeing that there's more, and I'm still there. That there's something still there that kind of puzzles me, and I don't see yet. But it led me back to looking and thinking about the cross, and what is another message there. And we talked about this somewhat, but what I see there that kind of brought me to where this lesson is it is the African that gave the Europeans Jesus. They gave him permission to do what they would with him. And what they would is beat him till he was unrecognizable, and they crucified him. And they served him up, the Africans served him up so that he could maintain who he was in the earth, maintaining his status quo. Well, what if that is the curse that we still live under? What if that is the same energy that the African gave up the most sacred thing that he owned to be crucified, and he is still being crucified for it. He's still being punished. He's still being killed. And again, I remind you, if we look at it, and I did not use the word cursed, but I guess it does apply here, because curse talks about to cover something up or to hide or to detach something. So it is not the curse that we think of. This is covered up until you reach the point where you uncover it, till you reach a point of awakening to uncover it. So what if, the energy that's in the earth now that we see the things that are happening to the African, and even femininity for that matter, is all because of the lack of understanding of the African and the thing that he put in motion. Does that part make sense, I guess? So the thing that we look, yes, sir.
No, go ahead. I thought you were finished.
No, I was just going to say at this part, the thing that we're looking for answers, and I mean the whole earth, this thing of equality, or this thing of seat at the table, we're looking for something that was given away by us, and the energy of it in the earth is still being generated by us. And I'll get to that in just a second, but please help me out with this if you can, if you understand what I'm saying or disagree.
I understand what you're saying. Now, I want to raise some questions about that. Okay, if indeed this covering up, this curse came as a result of Jesus being offered up, right?
Yes.
I think that that being the case, then the important thing to recognize is who did it. The only way that could be true, what you just stated, is that you had the authority to do that, right?
Yes.
And the only ones who had that authority were the priests, because the priests were the bridge between mankind and the other world, for the sake of understanding. Now, so if that is the case, then in order for that to be rescinded or atoned for, or for that to for us to be redeemed from that, then a reversal had to take place, or a change had to take place. Am I right?
Yes, you are correct. Let me back you up a bit.
So,
You're absolutely correct. The only other thing I want to include in that is if you look at what's going on today, is the same thing that went on during that time. This is pure masculine energy that's doing this. There is no infusion of femininity at all. This is the African. The priest of the African is represented by the priest, and this goes back to this is yours. You have dominion over the earth. You subdue it, and this was their way. God could not do this without the help of man. Man did this. The African, the spiritualness in the earth is what delivered up the word.
okay.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Pastor.
No, that's fine. That's fine. So this is where I'm headed with this. The redemption of that, right?
Yes,
The
sir.
reversal of that curse. It had to be atoned. So how was it atoned? If you destroy
asking-
this temple, I will raise it up again in 3 days. No, it's
Yes.
rhetorical. If you destroy this temple, it will be raised up in 3 days. What was Jesus saying? He was not just talking about his body, he's talking about what it represented. You delivered the truth for crucifixion. And the same God or the same creator, the same one who gave us life will raise his body up again. So what does that represent? It represents the resurrection of truth. So when Jesus was resurrected, it was the blood, excuse me, the blood of Abel crying out from the ground, being brought back to life, the truth being brought back to life. Regardless of how many times you make an effort to destroy the truth, it will rise. However, the atonement for delivering the truth up for resurrection is only realized in the earth when there is a genuine search for truth itself, to understand what happened with the crucifixion and the resurrection. As you said, it's happening today. Women did not deliver Jesus to the cross. The priest did, men did. Men relegated females to a place of servitude. And that, if you watch the scriptures carefully, that took place with the invasion. Prior to that, if you read what happened in the Old Testament between Abraham and Sarah, there's a totally different story between females and males. When you look at what happened after Jesus came into the earth, after Rome went into Palestine, you see a diminishing of respect for the female. And the men followed the footsteps. They took a seat at the table and changed the trajectory of their spiritual journey. And in doing so, they delivered truth up to be destroyed. But you cannot destroy truth. Today, in the pulpit, be it regardless of where it is, it doesn't matter what religion it is male dominated, male manipulated, male controlled. And the truth is being crushed to the ground over and over and over. And that continues to happen until a man rises up and says, enough. Our issue is masculine energy. Look at what happened at the tomb. When the resurrection took place, it was the female at the tomb. when resurrection takes place, it is the feminine energy that gives birth to truth. But that truth has to be sought after by the male. Why? Because it is he who destroyed it, attempted to destroy it. It is he who has used it to manipulate everybody on earth. So right now, where we are is recognizing the life of the truth comes from the womb of femininity. And we recognize that the submission to the truth breeds respect for femininity. And where we are at this juncture is establishing the respect for femininity. Why? Because the only way that we can be shown, only way that we can see with the eye is by respecting the womb from which the truth flows. Does that make sense to you, Ron?
Yes, sir. It does. Perfectly good sense.
So are we on the same page with this?
Yes. Yes, we are.
Now, are there any questions about this? Because I see all of this intertwined with everything that we've talked about in relationship to the understanding of history being imperative if we are going to ever recover truth in the earth. If we are going to be redeemed, atoned, or we're going to make atonement for what took place, it has to be done based upon our deep desire to repair the breach when it comes to the disrespect that has been levied toward feminine energy. The manifestation of this disrespect is seen in how the female is treated in this earth. And if you really, really look at the different aspects of it, even when we talk about transgenders, it is the female, is the transgender woman who you hear about being brutalized all the time. Anything that's related to female, anything that's related to femininity is brutalized. Why? Because the male sees its physical strength manifestation as being justification for subjugation of the female. And that follows suit, whether it be in the church, in the workplace, in the government, it doesn't matter. It is no coincidence that when you look at the manifestation of male dominance in the earth, you see a group of white males behind a desk watching a governor sign a proclamation that limits voter participation and limiting the rights of females to control their own bodies, while at the same time refusing to issue a mandate that will save lives. This in itself is chaotic. And the chaos not only has its genesis in the unrightness of the male, it also has its genesis it also is fueled rather by those females who are supportive of what they are doing, what they meaning those who sit at the table are doing. Right now, it is my belief that a major shift is taking place when it comes to that relationship between that Caucasian male and female. And that major shift is coming based upon what happened in Texas. The manifestation of it is what happened in Texas. I believe wholeheartedly that this had to take place for the opening of the eye of those who were supportive of whatever took place, as long as it did not adversely affect them in their eyes. The Caucasian female has gone along with everything that has taken place because she has not felt the effects of it in her own eyes, not realizing that she is simply a servant, as is anyone else, to that Caucasian male. Religion has played into that. The African has kept the African in that place of servitude, in that place of the diminishing of truth forever and a day. And it has freed the religious concept of the Caucasian from having to stay in that place with the African to keep him in that place. No longer do the African have to clear his message with the master, because master has taught him in the seminary and has taught him in the commentaries what is to be said and how is to be said. And master has taught him to disconnect history from the scriptures. Master has taught him that if you include the history, if you include politics, if you include government, you are combining church and state. But at the same time, Master understood that there's no difference between church and state. And that manipulation has continued until now. It is necessary to continue to put this clarity into the macro so that it can be a motivating force for others to desire not just change, but to desire balance, to desire truth. When people talk about equality of the quote unquote races, they're simply talking about a desire for balance. We have the obligation to continue to search for and infuse truth into the macro, but we also have the obligation to define what these terms look like. Example, we have the power and the authority to define that balance is also when people talk about equality. We have the authority to define that equality also speaks to the end of racism and sexism and all these other isms. Equality does not mean that everything is going to be exactly the same, but it does mean that everyone has the opportunity to embrace truth and live according to it, as opposed to living by a set of beliefs that have been conjured up by males. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Comments?
Yes, it does.
Questions? So Ron, this idea of this having been done, the African having delivered up his own life, right?
Yes. Yes.
Are there other insights into that? Or from anyone for that matter. I just say Ron because he initiated it.
And I'm on the same page, I think, anyway, that you were yesterday, and that we started the day off with. I just probably hadn't gotten it yet. So if you anybody sees something, yeah, please feel free to make it clearer, I guess.
Audrey raised the
Okay.
issue about resurrection of truth yesterday. Kathy raised the issue about being at the table. Barbara raised the issue about being able to, I'm sorry, seeing with our eyes instead of with our eye. These three insights are primarily the direction that we are being guided in right now. I would be very much interested in knowing, having a response from any of you.
Rev, this is Charles. I have a question about something else. And my question is, why did God say, my word is null and void because of the tradition of man, or the tradition of the priests?
You talk about why is the word of God really void? Because the traditions of men. Is that what you
Right.
asked, Charles?
Yes, sir.
Well, okay. That is seen right now. Because the truth of what the scriptures are saying is not being taught. And that in itself dilutes the power of the words that are on those pages and the meanings of what's on those pages. The words are the symbols, the meanings of those words, that's where the power is. And that has been diluted. One way it's been diluted is by looking that our water baptism will take us to heaven, when all it does is makes us a member of a church. It's spiritual baptism that brings us to the place of enlightenment. The baptism of the Holy Spirit. When I was asking for responses, I appreciate your question, Charles. I want to see if there are any other responses to your question, but also those three names I mentioned earlier. I was really asking for a response from you guys to see if we're on the pages, on the page where you are in response to what you brought up yesterday. But in addition to that, any responses to what Charles raised?
Well, this is Barbara. I was processing. I'm still processing.
Okay.
Because the walls of Jericho have been something that I've been just thinking about, and what the walls of Jericho mean, and what they can mean. And of course, there are different interpretations. But the thing that I've been just thinking about when I talked about the walls of Jericho, I think yesterday, and the people had to go around it 6 times, one time each day for 6 days. And then on the 7th day, they had to go around the wall of Jericho 7 times. And then Joshua directed the priest to blow the ram's horn, and the walls came tumbling down. And they're just simply, as you say, symbols of a spiritual truth. And part of that spiritual truth includes breaking down barriers to the spiritual truth in us as well, and harmonizing and bringing into balance the physical as well as the spiritual in us. And so the thing I'm stuck on now is that, well, they didn't actually go around just 7 times. The total number of times is 13. If you look at the 7 days, the 6 days, 1 time each. And on the 7th day, they went around 7 times before they blew the ram's horn. Well, that's 13. And I remember saying something several weeks ago about, well, Abraham's son Abraham, in Abraham's lineage, his grandson Jacob had 12 sons and 1 daughter. That's 13. And Esau, Jacob's twin brother had 12 sons only. And so as we've been talking, and I still don't have, I'm like Ron, I don't have the total grasp yet. But as you talked about the feminine and its importance in terms of, and I'm not talking about the gender, I'm talking about the energy and its importance in all of this. There has to be that connection between the energy that was the sister of these 12 brothers, as opposed to Esau's lineage, which only had the 12 princes. So there was something significant about the 13 once the feminine aspect was merged into it. And one of the things that I read related to, well, I don't even want to go there because I don't have it yet. But there is some significance there, and I'm gonna find some of it. And other people will probably find more of it. But that's what I was thinking about. I'm merging several lessons ago with where we're going, because as you said, it's all there connected together. And I don't quite have it yet, but it is coming.
Okay. Anyone else?
I love that. I love that, Barbara. Your observation and you took my mind somewhere else, because my example too led me to Jacob and Esau, but I did not see it from the perspective that you just brought in. But that ties in beautifully with what we're talking about. That one sister made the difference. I did not even see that. I like that though. I want to look at that again myself. Just kind of give that some thought. But I was looking at it from a different perspective. But yeah, I think we're on the same page.
13 is the number that ties everything together.
Okay.
And
Can I say something where I was going with that? Because I Barbara got me a little excited. The funny thing is, I don't. When she talked about the tying together the 13 and the sister, I was looking at Jacob and Esau and looking at their mother, Rebecca. Rebecca means to tie together. It means to bind, to secure things. And that took me on a different journey. I didn't look at it from the perspective of the sisters. I looked at it from the perspective of Rebecca, because when we look at the story on the surface, it looks like an extremely dysfunctional family. But this is beautiful balance that we've missed. And I was looking at it from there. One of the things, and this was the other place that I wanted to go with this, and I'm going to come back to that, okay? Because I want to talk about the feminine energy. That's mainly what I want to talk about today, and Barbara just opened that up. But I want to introduce you to something we haven't said before, at least in a while. I don't remember. I want to talk about the word dichotomy. Dichotomy, what does that mean? We talked about duality, but I want to talk about dichotomy. Dichotomy is speaking of when portions of a whole is brought into two parts. So you're fighting for control of two parts, fighting, you're trying to jointly exhaust something that you both can't control. Okay, so it's the contrast between those two parts, and that division or that contrast could be physical, it could be spiritual, it could be physiological or psychological, it can be economical. So what is the dichotomy that we're talking about? I'm talking about the non-feminine energy, the masculine energy between the European and the African males, the males. As a result of this covering, this thing that I'm calling a curse, and I don't mean curse in a regular English definition or Western definition that you are damned for life. I'm saying this is something that is covered up until you are ready to be awakened and understand what it is and see where you are. The dichotomy is the European man has established his own God. That God is status. It is money. It is his religion. It is his seat at the table. It is his place of authority and his right to define everything in the earth. He tells you what beauty looks like. He tells you what God looks like. And the African has struggled to be a part of that. That position is already held. That's not who you are. You cannot hold on to that. You cannot have that. You do not have authority there. And there is no femininity there. You have been struggling with that. And the struggle is you being the spiritual being. You have been the energy for that for throughout the earth. Not just America, but throughout the earth. You are the energy that keeps that going. And the thing is, recognizing, if the African get to the point where he recognizes who he is, and that is when I started looking at this and seeing Jacob and Esau, and as Barbara said, recognizing feminine energy. Okay. Any questions on that so far? Because if not, I want to read something to you out of the scriptures. I want to look at chapter 25 of Genesis for just a minute. But
just as you were talking, Ron, just as you were talking, you tied the part of the European masculine energy as related to the thoughts of money, his definition of status, his definition of what his seat of the table looks like, or his definition of beauty, et cetera, et cetera. And then you talked about the African male and the fact that what Africans have been trying to do is to create in themselves in that same image, but they cannot do it. It has failed. It will fail every time because, as you said, that's not who he is. Yeah. But the underpinning of what the African male has that offers the balance and not the dichotomy is the feminine energy. It is what the feminine energy contributes, so that there does not have to be that the African male can show forth then what true balance is, and it's not related to anything physical. It's spiritual. It's what I saw as you.
Yes,
as you talk.
That's it. You're exactly right. And what I'm describing, the bottom line, what I want to say is the people on this phone right now represent that flicker of light, that one little match in total darkness throughout the whole world. You can enlighten the whole world. There's few people right here. There's less than 1/100th of a percent of what even's in the United States. I don't know how many people on the phone, but it doesn't matter because you recognize the spiritual essence of what we're talking about and who you are. That is going to make the difference. So that is making the difference. Okay, I'm gonna read something to you, and again, as we have said in the past, this, I want to look at this conceptually. This is so much information. There's so much stuff in here that there's no way I can cover this word by word. But please feel free, if I skip something and you see something that adds to the conversation or brings light, please feel free to go anywhere you want. I might say I don't know if it's something I hadn't looked at, but please feel free, any of you, to help out with this, okay? I want to start. I think Jacob and Esau kind of clears the picture up. At least helps me because I see things in pictures, and I think this helps me explain this a little bit. I want to start in Genesis 25, verse 21. Okay, that's Genesis chapter 25, verse 21. And Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was barren, and the Lord answered him, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. But the children struggled together within her, and she said, if it is so, why then am I this way? So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 people shall be separated from your body, and 1 people shall be stronger than the other, and the older, shall serve the younger. When her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in the womb. Now the first came forth red all over like a hairy garment, and they named him Esau. And afterwards his brother came forth with his hand holding onto Esau's heel, so his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 60 years old when she gave birth to them. When the boys grew up, Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the field, but Jacob was a peaceful man living in tents. Now Jacob loved Esau because he had a taste for game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Now I want to come back to that 28th verse because that's what ties it all together. That 28th verse is extremely important because I want you to see something here. Rebekah and Isaac are one. Rebekah and Isaac are one. I want to show you that when the feminine energy takes over in this being, in this spiritual being called Rebekah and Isaac and Rebekah. I want to show you that because it shows you here. It says he had a taste for game, but Rebekah had a love Jacob. This thing takes place. His blindness. This old is not talking about a chronological age here, and I'm gonna back up and try to tie all this together. But what it is saying to him, he does not become blind until this boy gives away his birthright, and when he also marries a Canaanite woman. So, in other words, his spirituality takes over. His feminine side takes over and does what needs to be done. Now, where do they become one? Let's go up to a couple of verses and I'm sorry, I won't ask you to skip too much, but or you stay there. I want to read something for you. I'm in chapter 24 of Genesis. I'm gonna read verses 66 and 67. This is when Isaac meets Rebekah. It says, and the servant told Isaac all the things he had done. So Abraham sends the servant to get a wife for Isaac, and the servant comes back with Rebekah. And I'm skipping a lot of stuff, y'all. And he comes back with Rebekah, and he brings Rebekah to Isaac. And it says, then Isaac brought her into his mother Sarah's tent, and he took Rebekah. She became his wife, and he loved her. Then thus Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Here's the tie-in. They become one here. What do they become one in? They become one under the authority of Sarah. They become one under beauty. They become one under the comfort of Sarah. I read something about Sarah, and it was in the middle of the night, and I didn't write it down, and this morning I couldn't find it. But it was a publication written that talked about how Abraham did not make a move without confronting Sarah. So part of them guiding or going through being nomadic and going through the wilderness was guided by Sarah. He would always confront Sarah as to what the next move should be. So they worked as a team. They worked as one. She was Abraham's balance. So when it talks about Sarah's tent here out here in the wilderness, it's talking about an oasis. It's talking about a place of comfort, a place of balance. It's talking about a place where you could be human. Because that's what balance ultimately talks about, the place of your humanity, a place where these physical urges submit or come under authority of that spiritual thing that's tugging at you. And again, I'm getting ahead of myself, but that's the wrestling with the angels. He's finding his place of balance. And they start with his recognizing his femininity. So here we have Rebecca, which means to tie together and secure. She is tying this together. She is securing this spiritual image, these promises, for lack of a better term, of what God has given them. This is all coming together. So this is the balance of the two of them. So when it comes down here and it talks about, and Isaac loved Esau because he was a taste for gain, but Rebekah loved Jacob. This no coincidence. I'm gonna back up. Any questions so far before I back up and look at something? Because I'm, as you can tell, I got a little excited. What does what mean, Pastor?
What does it mean for Jacob, for Rebecca to love Jacob, and for Isaac to love Esau?
Okay, I was going to get into that a bit later, but what I see in it is she sees further than he does. She sees the spiritual essence of it. All he sees at this particular point is he sees comfort. He sees the earthly part of it. Esau represents the animalistic nature of man. Esau represents that which is physical. Esau represents that which is the urges. I want sex. I want food. I want this. I'm driven by those urges, those instincts in me. And Jacob represents the more. Now, Rebecca, the tying together is the seeing. What she sees in Jacob is that there is something more in him that based on the inquiry she had the Lord and the answer that the Lord gave her. She sees something that she doesn't maybe quite understand it all, but she sees that this is more than just her two sons. Yeah, the physical nature of this thing. So I see it that her being the spiritual part of this entity called Isaac and Rebecca, her vision is greater than his. So when it talks about him becoming blind, that's what it's talking about. Her vision has always been on the spiritual side, when his has not been as refined as hers. That's what I see. If anybody else sees something else, please help me.
It also gets back to this notion of desire versus need. Desire meaning, if I desire, it could be based on physicality. But need is what supports and undergirds my spiritual essence. The same as the idea of Leah and Rachel. Rachel was what Jacob desired. Leah was what Jacob needed. And so the balance, those two had to balance themselves, with the spiritual being the thing that, and incidentally, Dinah came out of the loins of Jacob and Leah, not Jacob and Rachel. So all of it is related to the spiritual undergirding and underpinning and of what supports our spiritual essence rather than the physical.
Excellent example. Thank you. Excellent tie-in.
So Rachel was a foreshadowing of the nation that would seek its creator, Israel. She saw that, but then maybe not understood it. That's why she is the one that ties everything together. And Dinah is the essence of who Rachel is in terms of the feminine energy being the glue that holds everything together.
Yes.
And when she's defiled, there is retribution. And that retribution represents the chaos that we're in now.
That's part of it, yes.
Okay. Any questions about that? Right, I don't mean to pull you away from where you are. But I don't know. I saw a common thread running from where you were with Rebecca to what happened with Dinah. Okay, I'm done. Ron, I'm done.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. I was talking with my mute button on. I was doing a James Richard. Anyway, I want to talk again about Genesis 25 and 25. It says, now the first came forth red all over it like a hairy garment, and they named him Esau. When we look at these concepts, I think it's also, as we have pointed out before, to look at these things conceptually. I think Barbara said earlier, somebody said earlier, when we talk about feminine energy, it's not talking about a person, a woman. We're talking about the energy, that feminine energy. And when we talk about persons, European and African or whatever, we're talking about the energy of, okay, and not looking at a certain clan of people, because that's not what we're trying to get across here. There's things. Yes, sir.
Ron, let me inject something, if I may.
Yes, sir.
In order for us to keep that straight, please understand something, that the human body is the symbol of the energy. The energy is the reality. So if you're looking at the African as an individual or as a person through our eyes, you are looking at a symbol that is the representative of the type of energy. I hope that helps us refrain from looking at this thing through this misconceived concept of race. Okay?
Can you say
Okay.
that, Pastor?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Can
Pastor,
we?
somebody asked you to repeat that. Can you repeat that again, please?
You want me to repeat it again?
Yes, sir.
I said that when we're talking about the African or the Caucasian, we're talking about symbols. When you look at that body of the African or that body of the Caucasian, those old white men standing behind a desk, we're not talking about them. They are a symbol of a type of energy that is representative as unripened. The African is a type of energy that is representative of the energy of ripeness. Therefore, we are not talking about people. The people are the symbols of the energy. And let's not get lost on the symbols, okay? Does that help?
Any questions about that? Comments? Okay.
Who asked
This
Yeah, that was me.
I
That was me, George.
Okay.
Does that answer it, George?
Yes, sir, Ron. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Okay. Here's another one I want to point out, and I hope we get to see this a little clearer. Jacob holding on to his heel. I talked about dichotomy. Two people can't occupy the same space. You can't be who he is. He is the oldest in appearance as this thing looks. I need us to see this though from a spiritual perspective. Spiritual insight, spiritual awareness is a desire. It is a desire. It is another way of saying as all of us has embarked on this journey, it is another way of saying I have no free will. I see something stronger than who I am. I see something that is offering me a greater clarity as to who I am and why God made man, and I want to pursue this. And I give up all of my ambitions. I give up my notions of what I have to this point desired to be or see myself as, and I'm going to pursue this. So from that perspective, your birthright changes, your DNA changes. It appears that this boy is the oldest, that Esau is the oldest. In the physical world, he is such. In the spiritual world, there is no way he could have obtained or held on to the birthright and the blessings. So the dichotomy is why I thought this was a beautiful lesson to look at, is Jacob does not pursue Esau. He pursues being who he is, following his own path, and Esau gives it away because he cannot hold it. It is not who he is. If you look at, I think in the next few verses, he gets hungry, and again, I'm talking about the animalistic part of him. It is that part of him that desires to follow and worship the body, that makes him give this thing up. So that is the thing that's as far as he can see. He is not a deep breather. He's not able to see the more. He is not able to see spiritual things. He is not able to meditate to that degree. I'm sorry.
So
Go ahead.
You're saying he can't see beyond where he is because he's blinded
Correct.
by materialism?
Yes, that's where we are now. That describes most of the earth. The animalistic does not always mean that everybody is walking in violence, but it does mean that you only see yourself as the here and now and what the body craves. So you cannot see spiritual. Let me give you a very subtle example. There is a kid at work, and he's 20 years old, nice, humble, well-mannered young man. His name is Gustavo. Gustavo. He and I have become good friends, and I'm constantly telling him, stop allowing people to call you Gus. Stop allowing that. And he said, it doesn't matter if they feel more comfortable. I said, no. I said, if that's what you feel comfortable, then do it. But that is not your name. And when they come to me and they'll say, Gus, I said, who is Gus? Why do you call him that? That's not his name. Well, his name's so long, it's 3 syllables. So what you're telling me is either you're too lazy to say Gustavo, or it takes too much of you. You cannot see past yourself any more than 1 syllable. 1 syllable. You cannot say Gustavo. So in other words, the human man is a shallow breather. He cannot see the spiritual nature of what is, and he shortens everybody's name. He shortens everything to his comfort, to his own comfort. And there is no spirituality in that. You cannot see the beauty of this kid's name. So you shorten it to something that makes you feel better about yourself. And you say, well, that's a minor thing. And yeah, it is a minor thing. But to me, it falls in line of who we are as a people. And I mean the culture in America. So that's how I describe Esau. He follows his earthly instincts. He cannot see what is deep, what is in him. And he gives away this birthright. And the birthright to me is a beautiful thing. And I don't know if Janice, are you on the line? Might get mad at me calling on her. Janice, the other week or so, we were
I'm
talking
here.
about. Okay,
Oh,
I
sorry.
can't. I was trying to remember your words the other day when we were talking about tithing, and your description of tithing, what that does, describes the birthright to a T, because they're one and the same. Do you remember what you said?
Oh my goodness.
I
It
thought
might
you
have
say
some
that.
was it might have something to do with um a flow between um the person who teaches and your responsibility to render the tithe. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, you said that, and you said something about the breathing. You said something I can't remember what it was, but you're exactly right. This birthright is not that you gain anything. It looks like, okay, I'm the oldest, I get half of everything. No, what it is saying is your responsibility will be that of the family. You're going to be that of the family. You're going to be the thing that keeps the family going. The spiritualness, the priesthood of the family. You're going to be that part that is always ripened. The part that they come to that is leadership. It also have a judicial authority of being the father of the family, for being the head of the clan, the one who helped form what direction that the family goes, and so this is a spiritual responsibility, and your having half means that you're not going to be burdened or have to be burdened with other things outside of your responsibility of the well-being of your family. So there will be an ebb and flow as they see you as being someone who, a person of trust, someone who is in leadership, someone who's on their best behalf, someone who's the father, someone who's the authority, and that ebb and flow as you go through and you be the advisor, you be the heart of the family, then that becomes the give and take. And it also ties in with the blessing. And the blessing also ties in, and hadn't gotten there yet, with the wrestling of that. The wrestling, when the name changed, it was not an external type of thing. Wrestling with any other type of being. The wrestling is, here I am. I see something from the internal perspective, and that's where we are, y'all. The visions that we're having now, the lessons that we're having are from an internal perspective. And I'm talking about the African. I'm talking about the one who gave up because of his status, who gave up Jesus and did not recognize who he was, who took feminine. I'm saying, when you put femininity back, when you regain your balance, these are the things that you see. This is what you become. So the wrestling is, which includes the wholeness of being human, which talks about your femininity and the balance of being able to see what is harmonious in you, recognizing your strengths and your mercies, your wisdom and your understanding. Even that animal part that you've learned to put under submission. So all of that is part of being the dew of the land. You become the dew of the land. You become the enlightenment of the earth. You become the more that the earth gives back.
Yeah,
yes, sir.
Ron, let me see if I got this, okay?
Okay.
Because a lot is being said, a whole lot. So what I'm seeing is this, that Rebecca is the womb of the concepts. And what happened is the concept of materialism and the concept of spirituality were produced from her womb. And even before it was birthed, spirituality made an effort to open the eye or change the journey of materialism represented by the grabbing of Esau's heel. And that did not happen. Therefore, Esau's journey was a journey of materialism, and Jacob's was one of spirituality. However, Jacob was not clear on his journey, and that's why he had to wrestle. And the wrestling was with the message that was inside of him that was telling him who he is. And this was not his first encounter with it, but this was the first time that he was still long enough to wrestle with it and see with the clarity the spiritual nature of his being, the essence of his responsibility in the earth, as opposed to that of Esau, whose journey carried him in the direction of materialism. And these are the concepts that we are faced with today. And at the juncture where we were, when we started this journey, was grabbing the heel of Esau, pulling at materialism, saying this is not the direction you should travel in. Materialism should be a shared thing, as opposed to something that's hoarded by a few. Am I seeing this right?
Yes, sir, you are. And I appreciate your explanation. That's why it takes all of us to do this. Yes.
That's what I'm seeing anyway.
I hope this is making sense, because go ahead, Pastor. You weren't done. Go ahead.
I said a lot is being said, and I want to continue this, Ron. I want to continue it without an overload, because I do believe that even if we were to go back even further than the Esau bent the birth, right? I mean, look at the argument when he gave up the blessing. What was it? It was Esau saw, or that concept is, I want what I can see. That what I cannot see is not real to me. That is the beginning of the creation of your own divinity, or that's the creation of your own deity. And your deity is the material things that you can acquire. And you can have all that spiritual mumbo jumbo, because it really is superstition, has no power, and means nothing. That's how I see the Partridge thing, giving up the birthright. If that makes sense.
Yes, sir, it does.
So,
it does. Anyone else?
May I ask if that's clear to everyone?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I feel your excitement, and I see the parallels here, and I don't want us to lose any aspects of it. I really don't.
Well, let me. I think you did already. I just wonder, does anybody else want to try to tie this up? Because I think I'm saying the same thing. I hope I'm saying the same thing we've been talking about. Moving to a place where, as the spiritual person, we begin to see back to beginning looks and feels like. That's been my quest for so long now, and I'm seeing it clearer and clear. And the embracing of that is, it sounds so simple. to say being human. But being human, I don't think can be put into words accurately. The authority that that has in the earth and what that links you to, and the awareness and the right to change the level of awareness in the earth, and the responsibility that it entails. Yes, sir.
That's a very difficult concept, because I mean, for eons we have been taught that a human is just the flesh, a physical entity. It's very difficult to go through, to carry people through a transformation of the idea, the concept that being human entails being spiritual and balancing the material. It's not one or the other. It is a conflation of both, because both has a role to play. Elohim could not be in the body in the earth having a physical experience if it were not for the material earth to sustain the body. And it's difficult to get people to see that, because we've been taught when you see another person, that's a human.
Yes, sir. And to get there, to see the human side, as Barbara has said in her example of Rachel and Leah and Dinah, we looking at this, the embracing of it is your feminine energy that takes you to that place, that gives you what is needed, what is necessary for spirit. So in other words, that's part of the wrestling that we're talking about. There is a portion in me that wrestles every day with what the fleshly man wants, what the physical man wants, what the masculinity wants. But their succumbing is, and you've heard people say this all the time, how hard the journey is, and if I had done it, if I had known where this would take me, I'm not sure. I have made that statement, and all I am saying is the masculinity in me, that portion of me, probably fought this to a degree but I relinquished it to the feminine side of me that showed, that was telling me this is what's necessary. This is where you need to be. And now I have grown to the part where that masculinity has become under submission and is saying, you know what? Yeah, this was tough, but I'm glad that I am on this journey, and I like where it has led me so far. So it is those two worlds, those two nations that we war with all the time. And without the feminine energy, there is no human. Without the feminine energy, as I was going to get to earlier or later, without that feminine energy, there is no holiness. Without the feminine energy, there is no holiness. In other words, if you look at holiness and it talks about being set apart, to being moved aside for something, what are you being moved aside from? You're being moved aside so that God can fill you with something, so that you can be infused with enlightenment. But if you don't recognize your feminine side, there is no womb to be filled. There is no womb to be filled. So when we talk about all the way back to the priesthood and Jesus, there was no womb. They could not see any further than themselves. And that's what we're talking about, moving to a place of holiness, moving to a place where we become total enlightenment. And that is the beginning. Okay? I guess it's a good place to stop if there are any questions or comments.
Well, yeah, I think so, because the idea of being holy, being baptized with the Spirit is Shekinah. So if you disrespect the female, that's a manifestation of disrespect for the Shekinah, which is the Spirit. That sets us aside, you see?
Yes.
You cannot disrespect femininity, a female, which is the manifestation of that, and say that you are holy or that you respect the Shekinah, the spiritual essence, the femininity of our Creator. And I do think, yeah, that's a good place to start. Of course, unless there are questions about that.
Yes, this is Angela. I had a question. So basically, you're talking about moving away, symbolism and embracing spirituality, because when you kind of hold on to symbolism, it leads you in a different direction. And she said that if I can't see it, then I don't believe it exists. But with spirituality, it exists. Even if I see it, don't see it, but I know that it's there, it exists. So is that what you're saying?
Yes, ma'am. It is one of the words I moving to a place of beauty, intuitive consciousness. In other words, there are things that we see in us, the realities that we discuss sometimes. There is no logical explanation for. You feel something, or you feel the direction that you should be moving in, or something you should do. There is no evidence that this is going to work. There is no evidence that this may not be the way everybody else did, but this is what's in me telling me the direction to go. That's what I'm talking about. Being able to trust that which is in you, seeing that and following your instincts, following that spiritual enlightenment that's in you.
And I just wanted to say this part too. I could go back to that scripture where Jesus, I think it was, I can't remember John, but Jesus said, we know the way. We might not see the way all the time, but we know the way. We know how to get there.
Yeah. Thank you, Angela. Anyone else? Okay. Pastor, do you have anything?
No, sir.
Well, I appreciate everyone's comments. I hope it made sense. If not, write down your questions and or comments, and we'll start there. We are in a beautiful place, y'all. I'm excited about where we are, and in where we're going with this. I think I want to kind of sum up what Mary said at the very end of our discussion. Is don't worry about them. Follow what's in you. Follow what you see. When we get to the place where we understand and trust what it means to return to the beginning, that's what will motivate us. And we don't have to be, what's the word? We don't have to be reactive. We follow what is in us regardless. And that is what changes the consciousness, the nature of the earth. Okay? I hope this made sense, and I appreciate everybody's input and just listening. And I hope we have some questions or comments next time we get together. Again, thank you. I hope everybody have a great day.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
Everybody, great day.
Bye.